running over, so I apologize. Um, let's start just with a quick roll call. And Vice Chair Bollinger, uh, Member Longacre, Member Hall, and I don't see Member Lear, but it's my understanding that she is on her way. Okay, thank you. And it's my understanding Deputy Newey is available online and that we have two individuals who want to give public comment. And we have a particular order. And who was that? Okay. Jason Straight? Can you hear us okay?
Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. So please provide the public comment.
Well, Chair Carey and Vice Chair Bollinger and members of the Law and Licensing Committee, several Apple programs, Alternative Pathway to Professional Education Licensure. We have submitted a letter for your consideration, and I wanted to give a few comments to go along with that letter that we had submitted and signed. We are dedicated to developing successful educators, but the current structure of the competencies has become a significant obstacle. We are not questioning the high standards of the Utah Effective Teacher Standards, UX, but rather the feasibility and effectiveness of the current elementary competency framework. Our chief concern is the sheer overwhelming number and scope of these competencies. The current mandate requires a generalist elementary teacher to demonstrate application and performance level expertise across 10 distinct subjects, from mathematical discourse to implementing dance improvisation. This immense breadth risks creating a preparation that is a mile wide and an inch deep, resulting in superficial competence rather than true mastery in the core areas of literacy and mathematics. The assessment burden to verify a candidate can demonstrate competency is simply unrealistic. How can a preparation program reliably assess a candidate's skillful performance in drama, PE, music, visual art, dance, health, social studies, literacy, math, and science at a demonstration level? This complexity leads to systems that are difficult to enforce consistently and feel like jumping through hoops to our candidates. We propose adopting a less is more approach. An example could be to identify a small number of high leverage anchor standards that, if demonstrated, provide strong evidence that a cluster of related skills has been met. This is one possible pathway to efficiency. And then in the table there, I've listed a few ideas of how anchor standards could be developed to show that the practitioner is gaining those skills by having an anchor domain. Recently, I had an opportunity to participate as a member of an education team representing USBE in Denver. The team met with education leaders from California, Colorado, and Tennessee. These meetings were very informative, and I greatly appreciated what I learned. In California, the Commission on Teacher Credentialing had 95 demonstration competencies and moved to 5. This is part of a broader systemic effort by the CTC to consolidate and simplify performance expectations and assessments for teacher candidates, making the pathway to credentialing more efficient and accessible while still ensuring teacher quality. The goal of a licensure system is to certify a prepared practitioner, not an ideal expert. By focusing preparation on flexibility, adaptability, and continuous improvement aligned with the US, and by reducing the number of prescriptive and vague competencies, we can ensure our programs produce teachers who are both well prepared and resilient. We urge you to engage with EPPs to revise and streamline this framework. Last night, I also collected some data for your consideration. Elementary content competencies. There are 25 demonstration, 19 application, and 4 basic concepts. For elementary literacy, there are 41 demonstrations, 9 application, 23 basic concepts. And so when you add those together, you have demonstration number of 66, application 28, and basic concept at 27 for a total of 121 elementary competencies. We would ask for your consideration in working with EPPs to help us to address the number of competencies currently that will be required September of 2026. Thank you for your consideration.
Jason, thank you for the public comment. Did you have the opportunity to talk to Dr. Height about your concerns?
I have talked with Dr. Height. I've talked with Lisa McLaughlin and Megan Everett, and then board member Bollinger.
Well, 121 or 141, it seems excessive, but I will tell you, I am married to a ballet instructor, and if we remove that competency, I won't survive the night. So would have to start somewhere else on the list. But I appreciate that concern. And do we have a copy of that letter in backup, or was it
Yes.
sent to us? It is in backup. Oh, he emailed it.
So
Okay.
you should have the letter that we submitted in backup. And then I also sent it by email, my public comment.
Well, I appreciate it, and I will be following up with you on that. In terms of discussion, it does seem the concern you raised on the surface does seem something worth diving into a little bit. But thank you for the time.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And who is next on public comment? Oh, Sarah Jones. Oh, and there she is. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, and the time is yours.
Wonderful. Good morning, committee members. Please excuse my hoarse voice. I hope I come through loud and clear. I'm Dr. Sarah Jones with the Utah Education Association, and I wanted to just briefly address your ongoing discussion of the 200 series of rules. I believe up to this point, it hasn't been entirely clear how this discussion process will roll out, leading to the recommendations the committee is expected to make in the spring. So we're asking that the committee take some time to determine how decisions will be made, ensure that those decisions are data-driven, and that the implications of the data be discussed in a formalized way with those impacted by the decisions in the UPPAC rules from HR, educators, attorneys, school districts, and so on. And then finally, to share that process and that information with the public so that the public can better engage in your process going forward. And thank you very much for your time today.
Sarah, thank you for that. I would just say that, we are holding these public meetings, and we have encouraged every member of the Law and Licensing Committee to reach out not only to the superintendents and educators within their district, but to other stakeholders. I don't think it's a secret that I think our UPPAC system is in need of repair. And in some places, I think an overhaul is necessary, but you're right in that those conclusions won't be finalized until the meetings are concluded. But to the extent anyone has a concern, I would encourage you to reach out to me or a member of the Law and Licensing Committee and get on the agenda. I know I've had 4 educators who've gone through the system reach out. I think we'll be hearing from 2 of them on Tuesday about their concerns. But if anyone has concerns in terms of the process or procedure or what they believe is working right, I would encourage them to come out and share that with the committee. But thank you very much, Dr. Jones.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move forward. And is Ben? Oh, wait, Elise is here. Good morning, Elise. Do you want to walk us through the agenda then?
Thank you. So the first thing that we have is the Wayne County School District waiver update. This is not a request for a waiver, but an update on a previously granted waiver. And I believe we have Ashley online to give more information about that.
Yes, good morning. Sorry, my video is just being loaded, slow to load. So this waiver was granted by the board in May of 2024. And at that time, the board had requested that the superintendent come back in a year and a half to just provide a oral update on how the waiver was going and kind of what the effects they were seeing were. And so I believe the superintendent should be there, I believe in person, and he has also submitted some achievement and attendance data for backup.
Thank you, AAG Beal. And Superintendent Shelley is here. And if you want to introduce yourself and give us an overview, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Chair and Board. Good morning. Happy to drive up this morning. It's a little bit of a drive. I came halfway last night. I have a house in Fairview, so I left Fairview this morning about 6 o'clock and still trying to wake up. But it's better than leaving Wayne County this morning. So that would have been about 4:30. Anyway, so yeah, we were asked to come back and present just midway. Well, we're a little past midway through the 2-year waiver on where we're at with data. So you've all got this in your, and it's showing on the screen, the longitudinal data. If you give me a minute to just run through that, is that what you want me to do, and kind of talk about how I feel we're doing? So the first data point there that you can see is our RISE proficiency with Willowa Elementary School. I didn't include Hanksville Elementary in this data just because the N size there is so small, and they really do skew the numbers, so we just, the primary elementary with the majority of our students is Loa. As you can see, the data that we started with, I mean, we went back to 2019, but when we were looking at the waiver, we were considering 23, 24 because that's the time frame we were in with this waiver. So with our language arts scores, it's hard to compare language arts scores. As you guys are aware, things changed with the test last year. And so we took a little bit of a dip from 24 to 25 in that 55% proficiency range, down to 50% proficiency. And science also took a similar dip. But we had some changes at our elementary school with our science teacher, which or with our 5th, 6th grade combination teacher. We also combined our 6th grade. I've pulled the 6th grade data out of this because we moved our 6th grades from our middle school back to the elementary, and then we combined our science teacher for 5th and 6th grade. It was his first year back in the elementary school. So there were some changes there that might impact that score. But the language arts drop, I think, is partially due to the change in the assessment last year. But I wanted to kind of share, and that's why I put that second bit of information there, just with the proficiency results off of the data gateway. I wanted to just show you how we compared to the state results. So if you look at that, our language arts score is 49. I can't see that, it's too small on my screen. 49% compared to 44% proficiency with the state. Our math score, 59% compared to 46. We're significantly higher than state averages there. And our science scores are still higher than the state average at 51%. So that was for the 25 assessment. Moving to the middle school, so this was grades 6, 7, and 8. You can see that from 24 to 25, we saw a significant increase in science, going from about 52% proficiency up to 56% in science. We maintained our math score or math proficiency level at about 52%, and then language arts, we've seen a 2-year trend of increase. So we're excited about that growth in language arts. And there again, you can see the comparison with state averages, and we are at or above state averages in all 3 core content areas. So going down further, this is some exciting data that we have. We're pretty pumped about this. Our high school principal was super excited, and we didn't have the final results of our language arts until just this last month. They showed up, but he knew his bigger concern than language arts was math and science, because we had been very low and have been for quite some time in proficiency there. So if you look from the year 23, our science score proficiency level was in the low 20s, and this last year we jumped to 49% proficiency in science. Our mathematics score again was right there around 31% proficiency in 23 and again in 24, and we jumped to 42% proficiency. So we saw significant increases in both math and science last year on proficiency level, and there are some changes that we've made there as far as instruction as well as the 4-day week. So I don't know how the 4-day week played into that, but it certainly did not impact us in a negative way. And if we go down a little further, this is some other information that we're pretty excited about in our district. You look at our ACT composite score. In 22, we were down just above 17% proficiency, and we jumped this year. Over the last 3 years, we've seen significant growth in that to where we're now 19.7, I believe, 19.6 or 7 is our proficiency level there. And then the percentage of students that scored 18 or above on the composite score, so from 24 to 25, and again, you see 3 years of growth in that, and we're up to almost, I think it was 68%, 68.8, almost 69% of our students scored at that 18 or better on the composite score. And then I also just wanted to show you off the data gateway that in each of the core areas, English, reading, math, and science, we were almost 17% proficient, 19 in science, 19.5 in math. Percent of our students scored, that was the average score for our students, was 19.9, 19.6, 19.5, and so on. So you can see that. In the initial application, we also, when we talked back in May of 24, is that when we came in? We showed you the number of pathways. We have quite a few of our kids complete pathways every year in the CTE program, and so we just added that data, and there was a few. We've had a decrease in the graduating class size and a decrease in the pathways, number of pathways completed, and then also a slight decrease in the pathways completed per capita. But that's information, or that stuff varies and fluctuates every year. We do have a large percentage of our students participate in CTE and complete pathways. That's pretty much the academic. And if you have any questions on there, I'll pause for just a minute and you can ask any questions or for questions on academic information.
So, Superintendent Shelley, thank you. And I looked at the data beforehand, and it looked overall, the trend line seemed to be moving in the right direction. But the one that caught my eye was this one on the pathways completed per capita.
Mhm.
And although it looks like a substantial dip, excuse me, the slide before this one, the overall, it looks like the trend line from 2022 up until 2024, and we granted the waiver in 2024, it looked like the trend line for pathways completed was moving up without exception. 2024 happens, the waiver's granted, and then we see this dip, and I think the pathways completed per capita was 1.6 and it went to 1.2 or something like that. It wasn't huge, but there was this dip. Do you think that moving to the 4-day instructional week had any negative impact on the pathways completed percentage?
I would answer no to that. I don't have any specific data to verify my answer, but the reason I would say no is because it is a very insignificant dip in my mind. I mean, it shows here, but it's only from 1.6 to 1.2 or whatever. It's less than a half of a pathway completed per capita, if you want to look at it that way. Part of the issue is last year not only did we go to a 4-day week, but we built a new high school and we moved our 7th and 8th graders over to the high school. In doing that, we brought all of our middle school teachers into the high school. In doing that, we were able to add a business teacher that we hadn't had in the past and a couple other things. So we had some change in our offerings, and I think that kind of diluted. A lot of our pathway completers are in our ag program, quite frankly, in that ag department.
Right.
And that diluted that and pulled some kids, so they didn't complete the ag program because we have very limited options as far as the number of courses kids can take. So I think it just diluted the program a little bit. That's what I would attribute the decline in, is now we have kids that have moved from some of the ag classes or the welding or the even the auto mechanics and that they've moved into that business side of things. And because we've offered more options for kids, they haven't had time to complete the pathways because you have to have X number of credits in each content area, if that makes sense. So I think that probably played as much of a role, just that change in structure of our system.
Sure. Vice Chair Bollinger?
Thank you, Chair. Superintendent, through you, Chair, if I may. With that change, does that mean that you'll have an opportunity to have additional pathways that weren't offered before with that consolidation? So in the future, we may see more completers and of a variety
Yes.
of pathways. Is that
That
Am I
would,
understanding
that
that
would
correctly?
be my assumption, that that's what will happen, yes.
And again, and Superintendent Shelley, these truly are just questions. One of the concerns that the committee has is that we're granting waiver requests, and cumulatively, the tipping point will come where we'll have a less than a 5-day instructional week, not because a formal decision was made in terms of that's good policy, but because these waiver requests keep rolling in. So we're just trying to get a better handle on what's working and what isn't. And I think you're the first superintendent to come in since the committee decided that everyone who wants a waiver request, we do want them to come back and report. So I don't want you to feel like these questions are picking on the results or what you've done or didn't do, but really it's a search for what's working and what's not.
Sure.
If we can go to the high school proficiency slide. And again, I know these are small changes, but again, we're just looking for breadcrumbs to help us better understand what should we be doing, what should we be looking for with these waiver requests. And when I saw this particular graphic, it looks like the trend lines for math and especially science. For math, it looks like we made that pivot, or your district did, in 2024, and we see the trend line going up for math. The trend line for science appears to have been going up since 2023 and continued after the change was made. I look at the trend line for language arts, and that seems to have taken a dip since the waiver request was granted. And again, I understand it's rare that it's one particular factor, but I'm asking you, to the extent that it's possible, do you feel that the 4-day, that the waiver request that was granted impacted the trend line for language arts, or were there other factors that had a greater influence on that?
Language arts, I don't know if it was the 4-day week. It's really hard to say because we're such a small district and our class sizes are so small. So when you talk about 9th and 10th grade kids that are taking the language arts assessment in high school, those students, if you have a 9th grade class of 25 students, and that's in I can't remember what our actual numbers are off the top of my head. I could look that up in a hurry.
Tested.
57
tested.
10th, 9th and 10th.
9th and 10th.
So we had, between the two grades, we had 57 students tested. So if you look at it, we went from 48% proficiency to 46% proficiency, and one or two students would make that drop. And So it may have been just the classes that tested this year. It could have been a number of things. I don't know that we've changed anything significantly as far as the instruction. I would not dare say with 1 year's data that it was the 4-day week that influenced that. It may have been just one kid that struggled.
So if we're saying that for language arts, would we have to make the same argument for math? That we don't know whether the 4-day instructional week actually caused that score to go up?
Well, I wouldn't say the 4-day week has caused any scores to go up. I would say that that didn't impact us negatively in those areas. That said, we have a new math teacher at our high school, and that combination again of bringing our middle school teachers over to our high school. We now have a middle school teacher who is now, she's a level 2 licensed teacher teaching 9th grade math. She's helped probably with those scores because she's picked up some of that math caseload, and then our high school math teacher is picking up the 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. So having a different teacher impact it, having a new high school math teacher could have also impacted those scores. Last year was his first year. This year is his second year. We'll see if the trend continues. I think we've had such a short window. It's hard to really say if it was the 4-day week, if it was the new hires, if it was the combination of bringing teachers over from the middle school. I don't know. There's so many different things in play at our district this last couple of years, and the crazy thing is as we're doing this, we are moving into a new school, and we had a delayed start as well. So we actually did go to school 5 days a week, at least once a month, all year to make up for the delayed start because our building wasn't quite ready for us. So there were so many factors this last year that, to me, just the fact that the data trends are fairly positive at the high school, I just think we're going to get better and better, quite frankly.
Man, there's something in your response. So in your opinion, can the 4-day instructional week lead to better academic outcomes? Or is it just we want to make sure that it doesn't adversely affect academic outcomes?
Well, absolutely, Chair. In my opinion, it can lead to better outcomes in our situation. And the reason being, I feel like our students are in school more because we are not leaving early on a Friday to go play. We still have to leave school for activities. And we'll talk about that in a minute when we get into our attendance data. But we still have, we have kids that are in school more and longer because of the 4-day week. And we're not leaving school for Friday sports, quite frankly. I think we're actually getting as much instructional time, if not more. So I think it can lead to and does lead to improved academics.
I did see the improvement on the attendance, and that's a welcome number. Any other questions on the academics? Vice Chair Bollinger?
Yeah, Chair, if I may, just question on the structure of your 4-day week. Every district does it a little bit different. Can you help us understand, did you make the days longer Monday through Thursday for any of your schools? And I know you mentioned that some of the Fridays they were coming in to help make up a day, but a typical Friday, is there opportunities for professional development and our planning, or is it just everybody's off on Fridays? Can you help us understand your structure a little bit?
Yeah, so our structure, last year, we had to do that at the high school. We didn't do it at the elementary. They didn't have the delayed start. So last year, we actually had academic school days for all kids and teachers, one Friday a month. We were I think 7 or 8 days late in starting the school year, so we added 7 Fridays to the calendar. But this year, the current school year, we have our kids, we extend the school day. So we added time in the morning and about 30 minutes at the end of the day. And we have our teachers come in fact, all of our employees come in one Friday a month. And that Friday a month is used for faculty meetings, for staffing, that kind of stuff. It's used for any professional development that we're doing throughout the school year. We have a couple of built-in professional development days in addition to those Fridays, but teachers are required to be in class or in school one Friday a month.
Not seeing any other questions? Go ahead, Superintendent Shelley.
Okay, so just moving past the academics then and down to the attendance. There's a couple of different data points here, and they're not, I won't say they're conflicting, but they're not exactly in alignment. So the first bit of data attendance I pulled right off of Panorama, and you can see there, we had in the 23-24 school year, which is when we started with Panorama, 36% of our students that were considered chronically absent. In 24-25, we dropped that to 28%. And then this past year, we were at 25%. That data includes the high school kids that are missing for activities. So if you go down below and see, there's another data set right above that picture of Dee Dee Wimmer, that in 23 we had 29% proficiency, or 30% that were not proficiency, that were chronically absent. 24 was 25.8, and then last year we were down to just under 18%. And we're trending that way again this year to even reduce that more. We've got somebody, an employee in the district that has taken on attendance, and we're involved in USBE's attendance efforts, and we're doing some things to try and reduce that chronic absenteeism significantly. If you look, and the reason I included the link to the news story on KSL and that little graphic there is, we were one of 4 districts in the state that were below 20% in chronic absenteeism for the 25 school year. So we're doing things to get our attendance in line, and I think I mentioned this when we presented or asked for the waiver, that 4-day week would help our attendance, because a lot of our data at the time showed that we were missing school on Fridays significantly, and some of that was for activities. A lot of it was because our Fridays were a minimum day, and kids didn't feel value and that there was a need to be there. It took us a minute to adjust to a longer school day for students and teachers alike, but they've adjusted now and they're doing fine. I asked my principals in our admin meeting this past week how if they had received any negative criticism or feedback from community, and they said no, they have overwhelming support from the community. And if you recall, when we applied for the waiver, 93% of our community was in favor of going to a 4-day week, and they still find that to be a value. So any other questions you have, I think that's the data I had to share. So
Thank you, Superintendent Shelley. Member Longacre?
Yeah, I'm really interested in the 4-day school week, and I think I already know the answer to my question, but I'm going to answer it anyway, or ask it anyway. Do you find that teachers call out less, and you don't need substitutes as more because they have that Friday off and they can do their personal things that they would during the year on that Friday? So there's less disruption in the classroom because teachers don't need substitutes as much, possibly.
anecdotally, I would say yes. I don't have actual numbers with me to give that data. I don't think we are using as many subs, and in our little district, it's hard to find subs, so teachers try not to miss. But one thing I have found personally is when I go to appointments and try to do things, it's hard to schedule a doctor appointment on a Friday because doctors don't work on Fridays. So I know we still have people that leave occasionally during the week, but our teachers try to be in attendance anyway. It's harder. I mean, any of you that have been in public education, and even me as a superintendent, if I'm gone for a day or two or take a vacation or whatever, everything just piles up. It's hard to catch up when you get back. And so teachers are there for the most part. We still have subs. The hard one is the high school, again, because of activities and when coaches are gone or FFA advisor is gone and different groups and clubs and whatnot. We have a struggle at the high school in particular, but we do have 3 or 4 just great key subs that pretty much cover our entire district, and that's all we need. So I don't anecdotally again I feel like yes, teachers are there more. They can schedule their shopping trips and other things that they would leave for this time of year, especially Christmas. They do that on Fridays, but I don't have the actual data. I could get it, send it if you need it. My
Can I ask
secretary
another
does a great
question?
job tracking that.
If I can ask another question, because teachers have that Friday, do you find that instruction is less on a Chromebook and more pen and paper because teachers have extra time to grade papers. Has Chromebook time changed at all from the 4-day school week?
Interesting question, because I know that's the governor's push right now is to get rid of devices at the elementary level in particular, but we have some key, and this was ingrained in us early on at the elementary level with the early intervention software, where we were required to use or have X number of minutes per day per student on this software. And teachers got used to that. So we still use our devices. Our teachers, I feel like they teach what they need to teach. And then when they're doing small group instruction, that's when the devices come out and kids can go work on their literacy software, or math software, while teachers are working with the more intense kids over here. When I go to Hanksville Elementary, for instance, that school has about 16 students, K5, and then they also have a little preschool down there of 4 or 5 students. That we've only got one licensed teacher down there, so she uses software a lot and she has 2 or 3 aides that are also helping, but she's instructing a small group at a table. After the whole group instruction, she breaks it up and she covers K3 or K2, and then she does 3, 4 in the afternoons with the core content. But she has to use devices, and the aides are just bouncing around trying to support. We are using them. I don't know that has decreased, just because our teachers have gotten used to it. And they don't use it as time for grading papers and correcting. They use it as an instructional unit while they're doing other things with other kids.
So Superintendent Shelley, just some general questions that we've been asking. Special education students, many require additional support, additional time. In the absence of a 5-day instructional week, how are those students performing and adapting to the 4-day week?
I would say comparable to everybody else. We still have our special ed students. Again, it's a very difficult in our small district data point to measure, because the N size is so small and one kid makes a huge difference. The percentage of students in our district that are on IEPs, those kids, if they require special services or any additional services and support, what was written into the IEPs haven't changed. If they're required to have 30 minutes a week of therapy, or 30 minutes a week of additional math time, or 30 minutes a week, what was written into the IEP is still provided for them in that 4-day week. We meet the needs just like we would have before under the 5-day week. We've extended the school day, so there's more time in the day. If they get 40 minutes a week and they would have done that spread over 5 minutes, now they get an extra 3 or 4 minutes per day under the 4-day week to still get the amount of time written into the IEP. That's an area of special ed in particular where we do need to beef up that instruction and do a little better job, because their data results, again, across the state, you'll see that the data results there are not as good as they should be or could be. But I don't know that the 4-day week has impacted that. We've just adjusted their time in the 4 days to make sure they get the services that are required in the IEP.
And have you heard back from any of the special education instructors or educators in terms of how this is working and whether or not they believe a change is necessary? So instead of adding 3 minutes to the end of the day, the fact that they're not meeting on that 5th day could still be material even though the time is the same. Any type of feedback regarding the special education students in that respect from the instructions or educators saying, this isn't working out the way I thought or the way we had intended?
I haven't asked the SPED teachers in particular. We have 2 in our district, one at the elementary, one at the high school. But I haven't asked those 2 individuals. But again, talking with principals, feedback has been very positive, and I would assume that they included the special ed teachers in that. I haven't personally asked them, but I haven't heard anything negative from them, no.
Generally, if a special education teacher has a concern, they make it known, right? Usually it works its way through the system. So
They do.
I'm assuming that there aren't any if you aren't aware of them.
Well, and Chair, just to add to that, I do have in my little tiny district, believe it or not, we have a full-time SPED director. So our SPED students and our SPED teachers get quite a bit of support, and she spends a lot of time in the schools because she's full-time for 45 kids. She has time to do that. So she spends a lot of time in the schools with preschool, with the at the elementary and at the high school level, and they get quite a bit of support anyway. And I guarantee, to your point, if they would have had concerns, I would have heard from her because she's one that does not let things slip.
That's great. One other question, and that would just be on, and again, I apologize, I'm not familiar with Wayne County, but
Please come visit.
I I'll leave tomorrow and arrive on Thursday. But what about before school meals, after school meals, addressing those non-academic areas of student need? To the extent that Wayne County was providing those services 5 days a week, do you still continue to do that? How are those student needs being met on that fifth day now that you're on that 4-day instructional time frame?
So we are not providing any services for students on Fridays with food or meals. We
Were those services being provided prior to the change from the 5-day instructional week to the 4-day?
yes, we did provide. Well, actually, no. I'm just trying to remember back. Quite frankly, I was shocked when I started in Wayne. I've been there. This is going on my 6th year now. When I started in Wayne, they didn't serve lunch, I believe, on Fridays, and they didn't serve breakfasts. And we have started serving breakfasts every day. But the lunches, we had a minimum day on Friday, and we released kids at noon, and they went home. And prior to last year, the number of students we served at the high school was about, we had a grab and go lunch or breakfast, and then the lunch, we only served about 30 students. They just didn't eat school lunch. And so now with the change in school, we have a new kitchen, we have new staff, we have a lot more students at the high school because we brought our middle school, our 7th and 8th graders over. We're serving 140 to 150 kids every day at the high school versus 30 the year before. So during the week, we're serving a lot more students. We have, prior to the 4-day week and being on that minimum Friday, we weren't covering meals then. We've gone to full, every school is serving breakfast and lunch 4 days a week now. But the interesting thing is students or parents in Wayne County, the community, they're just hardworking, honest people that don't ask for handouts. They don't ask for help. They don't ask. And I know there's still some need, and I know there are kids that are hungry, but the majority of our people just take care of themselves. When you talk about free and reduced lunch applications, we beg people to apply, and they just won't. They just take care of themselves. And so Fridays, it hasn't come up. Parents haven't complained. We don't do any kind of summer foods program. We feed them 4 days a week, breakfast and lunch.
I just have one final question, and this, I'm going to try to force you to answer this because I'm asking, what do you think is the biggest positive unexpected benefit that you've experienced in the district, but also the biggest challenge or negative fallout from going to the 4-day week? And neither has to be monumental. I'm just asking for something that maybe you didn't anticipate or expect in a positive nature and on the negative side.
I would say positive, putting me on the spot a little bit here. there's a couple of things that kind of stand out. One of them, and I can't attribute it necessarily entirely to the 4-day week again, is just our high school trends. We're excited about the high school trends. We're excited about the attendance improvement, the academic improvement. Uh, lots of positive feedback from staff and some community about having Fridays available for whatever, whether it be extended weekends, whether it be vacation time, whether it be I don't know, just whatever, shopping, whatever. People really appreciate the 4-day week. And you know, if you look at industry, I've heard this over and over again, and I know it's different than academics, but a lot of people, we have an elementary school under construction right now, and most of our contractors work 4-day weeks, and they say they're more productive that way. They get more done. There's not as much start up and tear down, and I think some of that kind of spills over into the academic day. If you're going a little longer, teachers have to change things up a little bit in that kids' attention spans are shorter and whatnot. But I think just overall morale, because of the 4-day week and having those Fridays available, that's been a big benefit. The negative, and this is one that I kind of anticipated, I won't say it was a surprise, but the biggest drawback that I see is people wanting to take advantage of not having Fridays. There are a few. I told you earlier that most of our people just want to be there, but we do have some employees that, and I think there's always going to be a few like this. Well, what are you making us do this on Friday for? They don't want me taking their Friday time for professional development. Well, that's what we intend to do with it. We told you that up front. One thing we didn't do was change salaries. We have continued to try to increase teacher salaries, and yet I've had to respond, or I haven't had to, but I've chosen to, I guess, respond to a couple of different people that have asked for a little bit more. And I'm saying, hey, wait a minute. You're working a 4-day week. We've reduced the number of days in your contract. You're still getting paid more. They still, I mean, you give them an inch and they want to take a mile, and that's not a lot of people. It's a very limited few. Overall, everything is going very well, but that's the stuff I don't like to deal with is just people wanting more and more and more all the time. But
I have the same thing with the committee. We start at 8 o'clock and then they want 8:30 and then 9 and 9. No. So, but Superintendent Shelley, I appreciate that. Are there any questions from the committee? And if not, AG Beal, if you have, I know you've kind of spearheaded the research on this and looked into this. Are there any questions or topics that you'd like to follow up on? We'll take that as a no. And Elise, do you, Deputy Superintendent? No? Okay, Superintendent Shelley, thank you very much and safe travels.
well, thank you, and we'll probably be back in 4 or 5 months asking for a renewal, so we'll see you again.
Deputy Newey, next on the agenda.
Yes, I am pulling up my screen right now. Our next agenda item is a review of R277322.
We
This
talked
is-
about taking 304 first.
Oh, 304. My
Yep.
apologies. Let's go with that one. So we'll move to item number 4, R277304, teacher preparation programs. And we have both Ben and Malia here to speak to that one.
Yes, so in R277304, staff is just proposing a couple of small changes. First, the proposal is the rule currently incorporates by reference the elementary content competency standards. This is what Mr. Straight spoke about earlier in his public comment. Staff is proposing that that be taken out from the incorporated by reference section. There's also a provision further down where programs are required to implement that set of competencies by September 1st of the coming year. Staff has also deleted that. That's on 174 and 75. Staff is in the process of reworking these, and based on feedback from the field, the feeling has been that it would be better to take these out of the rule until they're ready to be presented to the field and to be implemented. So Dr. Lisa McLaughlin is the one that's leading the effort on that. She can answer any questions you have about that.
So I don't have any questions about the proposed changes. I've spoken to uh, individuals in the field as well as here at USB. I understand those. I do have some general questions that I'd just like to go through with the language of the rule to help me better understand. And on line 24, we use the phrase through competency-based instruction. Do we have a working definition in rule of competency-based instruction? In this rule or in Rule 100 or anywhere? And the reason I ask is I was meeting with the Ogden School District. We have a great program, and they use competency-based instruction. And as we spoke, the individuals in the room, it became clear that everyone had a kind of a different idea of what that meant. And so do we provide guidance on what that means?
We don't have that defined in our definitions rule. I'm not sure if there's an individual rule that has it, but I don't think so.
There's a definition of competency, not competence.
So it doesn't sound like it, no.
And Dr. McLaughlin, let me ask you, would there be a benefit to defining that? Would that just be adding more words to an already long rule book? But in your opinion, what are your, does the field, is that something that would benefit public education?
Yes, I think.
If you could
I-
just
I love
introduce yourself.
definitions, so-
It-
Oh, Lisa McLaughlin, I'm the Educator Preparation Coordinator. And yes, I feel like a definition could help, and we could work on adding that when we bring the rule back with the other competencies. Malia had mentioned that there is a definition in code.
On the definition, they just use the phrase.
Oh, they use the phrase in code. So we could, look at how it's used in code and how it's used in our rule and come up with a definition that matches both of those.
Okay,
Chair, if I may.
please.
There is a definition, it's on the screen right now in code of personalized competency-based learning. So this is, I think, what they were referring to in case you wanted to see the reference.
And just for the committee's information, if I may, I think the intention would be to bring this rule back after they've finished working on this, on the process with these competencies. So we would be bringing this back to the rule probably later next year.
Again, if staff believes that this would be a benefit, I would ask them to take a look and see if it would benefit or at least reference the definition of learning and maybe make them align, but I'll defer to staff on that. The other question, and I'll just go through these real quick, line 31. And I guess it's 30 and 31. It seems like the emphasis here in a physical classroom, which may include experiences in a virtual classroom. With more and more instruction taking place online, does this need to be changed, or do we still want the emphasis on the physical classroom with this overlay of virtual classroom experience?
I would leave that up to the board to decide. We have been able, the way the definition currently is, has been useful in working with programs that do provide online instruction, particularly our Apple programs. There's several online Apple LEAs that provide online instruction that also prepare teachers. And so we interpret this as being that they could complete their clinical experiences in an online virtual environment if it is appropriate in where they're working at. So I don't think we need to change it, but if you feel like we need to clarify things, then we're open to that.
I don't. I just wanted to make sure that you have the tools that you need to do what you need to do. And it sounds like
Yes.
you do. So we'll leave it alone. Line 101 and 102. We use the phrase including explicit instruction. And I don't know how explicit instruction differs from instruction. So could you help me understand what that instruction is? Dr. Heights, this will be good. I'm going to turn off my mic.
I love myself some explicit instruction. Instruction comes in a lot of different ways. We can have inquiry-based instruction where we give kids a problem or a situation or a pile of materials and we say, go learn something. That's how we learned as kids, by playing and figuring things out and realizing that if we try and jump off of a tall wall, we're going to get ourselves hurt. That's learning, but that's not explicit learning. Explicit instruction would be where the teacher provides very explicit instruction around vocabulary words. This is the word. This is how you say it. This is what it means. Here's how you use it in context. Here's a tool. Here's how you use the tool. Here's when to use the tool, instead of just allowing kids to figure out when's it going to be best, or, oh, I think I might be able to use that tool in this setting. So explicit instruction is very pointed and for a particular situation in particular settings with particular content, and all of the other kinds of instructions they happen in lots and lots of different ways, but explicit instruction particularly has a very high effect size for students, particularly students with disabilities and students learning English.
And that's why we're calling it out, because we're saying including in explicit instruction. So it could have inquiry-based instruction, other elements, but we really want to emphasize we need to be using explicit instruction as well. Okay, thank you. And then line 106, developing higher order thinking and metacognitive skills. And again, I will ask, when we talk about metacognitive, oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Height. I better exercise some metacognitive skills. Just go. What is that, and what are we saying there?
Yeah, so I apologize. I did not introduce myself earlier. Malia Height, I'm the Executive Coordinator of Educator Licensing. Metacognition means thinking about thinking. And so a metacognitive skill is where we help students to think about what are they thinking first, what are they thinking second, what are they thinking third, so that they can understand their learning process at a more discrete level. And it really helps students, instead of just saying, oh, well, this is the answer and I know that I'm right, being able to help them articulate why do they know that their answer is correct. And that helps to embed the learning into a deeper, or as this says, higher order level of thinking, so that it actually prepares them to be able to apply that learning in multiple unique situations and not just memorize that this is the answer. It helps them to learn and to learn how to learn.
Thank you, Dr. Height. And just one other question, and this is on line 116. It talks about trauma-informed practices. And just like my question about the competency-based instruction, do we have a operational definition in rule, and I'm going to start with Rule 100, do we define trauma-informed practices in Rule 100, and then if not, in any other rule?
It's not in R277-100, no.
I heard it is in code, and then if we could call up the code.
Chair, if I may.
Yes. Vice
On
Chair Bollinger.
page 37 of the LRBI manual, it says in quotations, it doesn't say here's the definition, but in quotations it says trauma-informed practices, that part's in quotations, in schools aim to create a safe, positive, and supportive environment for all students. So it does talk about how trauma and adverse experiences that happen in childhood may lead to learning behaviors, and then provides that additional information. But to your point, it's not necessarily a direct definition. But that's on page 37 of the 2025 LRBI manual.
Dr. Height?
If it may help, I think maybe an example of what is generally accepted as trauma-informed instruction. For example, I have had students in my classroom when I was a high school teacher that had trauma around loud noises. That was part of their family experience. They had an explosion at their house. It was a bad thing. And so when we had that child in the classroom, when we were going to have a fire drill, we would make sure that this child was somewhere outside of where the loud alarms would be happening. So it was a way to provide an accommodation to somebody who had experienced a trauma, so that they could feel safe in the building and have access to learning.
And I'm just, my concern or my thought is that on these types of topics like competency-based instruction, trauma, where they reappear across a multitude of areas of rules, it may be helpful to have a consistent definition. And so again, I would ask staff, I am not going to propose one, but I would just ask, and again, this is me, not the committee, but that you take into consideration perhaps a definition of the competency-based learning / instruction and trauma-informed practices when the rule comes back. Any other questions from the committee? Vice Chair Bollinger?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to wrap back around to Director Straight's public comment. I've actually been part of a community of practice that was able to go to Denver and participate in an opportunity to discuss. And like he said, we met with, there were other states that were there, California and Tennessee and Colorado, with the Education Commission of the states. And we did talk a lot about education preparation programs. The EPPs is what the acronym for it, as you heard him talk about. And there was a group of individuals with a lot of knowledge from the field and concerns that were discussed, particularly in Utah, on the number of competencies, like that were discussed, the 121 competencies, but not only that, but on some of the competencies, as we did a deep dive into them and getting feedback from even some of our university partners, saying it was challenging because some of the competencies were listed as maybe an application when maybe it should have been a demonstration, or vice versa. So there definitely is a need to clean that up, just not just the sheer number of them, but it sounds like even just not just our Apple programs, but our university partners are having a hard time figuring out, how do you even demonstrate this? And so I do support the work that is happening on this, and I know that the staff has been working on it, and it's been a pleasure to be a part of that, and just hope that we can continue to support that process. So thank you.
If I could just take a privilege as the chair, because Vice Chair Bollinger reminded me of something that I was intending to ask. When we talk about competency-based education, where does Utah fall in the spectrum of states? Is that something we are leading out on, we are behind on, and directionally, where are the states moving? Where's higher education moving? If we could just have that general overview, because this is a discussion that has been coming up with reoccurring frequency, and I think that would benefit us as a committee to find out generally.
Chair, if I may, Utah has all the gold stars in the world of competency-based learning, both for our K-12 students as well as for our assessment of education candidates or teacher candidates. Utah is bucking the trend for things like teacher shortages because of our competency-based teacher preparation, educator preparation. And we have seen in the 5-6 years that Utah has been doing it, more states moving their entire licensing and ed prep structure towards competency rather than time-based assessment, because I don't care if you've spent 5,000 hours in a classroom. If you can't do the job, then you shouldn't get a license and do the job. We need people who can do the job. And so we've seen it really impact our space in Utah, and Utah has been a leader nationally and even internationally for the work that we're doing in ed prep within the competency-based learning space.
Thank you. And then Dr. Height, when there's pushback against competency-based teacher licensing programs, what are those arguments? Where are they gaining like a critical mass and saying, this is why you shouldn't be going down this road?
It's a really interesting question and fun thought process. I think a lot of the resistance is not necessarily grounded in some sort of a logical reason, but but this is the way we've always done it, and why would we change? Because we're awesome at doing it this way. And so it really is the pushback is about change and not about a different way is better. It goes back to the same idea that we've been talking about, the 4-day school week. Do the hours in the classroom, do they make a difference in learning? Do they not? Do we change the way we instruct? Do we change the way that we access information? And I think in the last 5 years, particularly with the COVID pandemic, we saw that we have to change the way we interact with information. And we can't sometimes physically all be in the same space to do time. And competency is really a way to not only allow for those kinds of exceptionalities to occur, which they will and do, but also a way to leverage the competence that some candidates bring into the profession. We have some candidates who are participating in our ed prep programs that have been paraeducators for decades. And they are awesome, exceptional teachers in the classroom. And by using a competency-based ed prep program and system, we're able to say, well, you, Mr. Paraeducator, have the best classroom management I have ever seen in my life. I don't need you to go sit in a class at a college or university so that you can prove to me that you can manage a classroom of 30 rowdy kids, because I already see that you have the competency, and that is really where the value is. And so back to the original question of what's the reason, most of the time it's about change and not about, well, some other way is better.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you for your leadership on this issue. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Deputy Newey, are we ready for, is it 322?
Can we make a motion?
Oh, or make the motion.
I'm happy to make that motion,
Thank you,
Chair.
Vice Chair.
I'd like to make a motion that the committee approve R277-304 Teacher Preparation Programs, Draft 1, on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading.
Okay, the motion before the committee is that the committee approve R277-304 Teacher Preparation Programs, Draft 1, on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading. All those in favor? Aye. That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And then Deputy New, if you want to queue us up for the next item on the agenda.
Absolutely. Our next agenda item is R277322, Local Education Agency Codes of Conduct, and this has been on previous agendas as have been pushed to today. Apologize for my words.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And because I am the lead sponsor on this provision, I've asked Vice Chair Bollinger if she would chair this particular part of the committee meeting today.
Thank you, Chair. So with that introduction, I would open this up to the committee for discussion. Chair Carey?
If I may, Vice Chair, and I just wanted to, and I know I sent an email to this effect yesterday. I received notice from AAG Beal. I asked her to consult with the Attorney General's office regarding First Amendment implications or impact of some of the proposed changes in terms of free speech and that balance, that the right balance that needs to be struck. Despite her best efforts, and I know AAG Beal is online, and if I misstate something, please jump in. Despite her best efforts, she could not, she's not in the position to tell the Attorney General the priorities of his particular schedule. So that research was not ready yesterday or today. And because of that, I sent everyone on the committee an email indicating that I would not be moving this matter forward, but that it is at the committee's discretion. I mean, it's before the body. But I wanted to wait to get that feedback from the Attorney General, as I believe it could. I don't expect that it will, but certainly it could change various elements of the proposed draft. So thank you, Vice Chair, but I just wanted to explain why I was not moving this matter forward at this time.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Any other discussion? Member Lear?
Well, that's the problem. Thank you. I've made several points, several concerns I've raised regarding this rule. Because there's not a newer draft, those concerns remain. I don't know that I need to repeat them and take another 20 minutes, but I think it's really important. I guess the thought that I would leave today is that we are the board committee. Our committee is working on reviewing professional practices rules, and I think this particular rule is very closely tied to that. Even though this rule is broader, it goes to all school employees, not just those who are professionally licensed. But I think we need to be very focused and very concerned that the language in this rule is exactly consistent with the standards, the language for professional licensees, because to have one code of conduct rule that would apply to those who are licensed and a different set of professional standards for those who are licensed in a different rule would be very confusing. This is already pretty new, and then to further complicate it with differences between those two lists of standards, I think, even though very much understand that this is a broader, that 322 has a broader scope. So that is my biggest concern, that we wait on this until we've worked through the issues that are UPPAC rules, and then make sure we get the breadth of this particular rule accurately and involve in a very active way, involve LEA employees and superintendents, leaders in this discussion, so that it's not so that it is a collaborative effort that they support. And that collaboration takes some time. So this is not a effort to stall or hold out on this, but rather it's an effort to collaborate and urge collaboration, and then consistency between the UPPAC standards for licensed employees and this rule that would apply to all employees. So those are my primary concerns I have. I could go line by line with several other concerns. I won't do that today. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Lear. Chair Carey?
Yeah, and just to say that I know that Board Member Lear and others have expressed areas that they would like to see changes in, and just because they haven't been proposed, I don't want any member to think that those aren't being considered and that those that common ground may not be found. It's just that I feel it's best to wait for the guidance from the Attorney General before making these changes, which may need to be changed again based on that feedback. So thank you, Vice Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I would just say, I do know that there's some LEAs in my district that I cover that would like to see an updated draft. Their biggest concern is the fiscal impact this may have on their district and some of the re-reporting requirements. And so I appreciate your willingness to make sure that we're getting a full picture and make sure that we're addressing this correctly as we move forward with that. Member Longacre.
Yeah, no, I also appreciate the time that we're spending on this because I do have my district who has concerns about this, and we haven't gotten an updated draft. So just echo what's already been said.
To make a motion.
Okay, Member Lear.
If you're ready for a motion, I'll go ahead and make that. I move that the committee, oh, you'll have to write it for me though first. I can just repeat that I move that the committee further postpones discussion of this rule to a later date. Is that specific enough, or?
Let's make sure that this motion is, it says that the motion is that the committee postpones discussion of this item to a later date. Does that
That's
capture?
right. I know probably someone would like me to say January or something very specific, but we've seen that we're at the mercy of, one, the Attorney General's office that's very busy and still in, I think, a mode of getting everything up to speed. And secondly, we are in the middle of a holiday season that will not probably bring about some of the information we want, both from LAAs and from the AG's office. And thirdly, we've got this other issue of the conflating of the, which might be very, very appropriate between the UPPAC rules and this rule. So that's why I say, and I think it brings stress to LEAs to say, we're going to be talking about this on January 4th. Oh, just kidding. Oh, we're going to be talking on this on February 4th. Oh, not really. We're not quite ready. So I think we ought to be realistic and fair and say this is going to be postponed to a later date.
Okay, thank you, Member Lear. Chair Carey?
Yeah, I would do I'd do a substitute motion, and that would just be that it does come up at the January board meeting. And this is why, in that I do understand that we do want some certainty. We do want to be in a position to say we're moving forward, we're not moving forward. But the ambiguity in Board Member Lear's motion, that would require us to have a separate vote as to when to bring it back. I'm not even sure if that process would involve getting reapproval from the Executive Leadership Committee to bring it back. So I think just having it on the 2026 agenda, my hope is that AAG Beal does have that information at that time. And if we get it soon enough, then not only can we hear it, we might be in a position to act on it. So I would just ask that I do believe the postponement is in order, but I think the risks of not aligning this with a specific date to bring it back outweighs the ambiguity in Board Member Lear's motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Member Lair?
I just have a question to the maker of the substitute motion. Do you think we'll be finished, and this is sort of rhetorical, but do you think we'll be finished with our UPAC discussion by the first part of January?
Chair Carey?
Given the number of individuals who have reached out, who have gone through the UPAC process, the more I'm speaking to them, the more I'm learning about the flaws and areas that I believe need to be addressed. I don't think the deadline was ever intended for January. I think at the earliest we were looking at maybe end of February, end of March. So no, I don't believe so, but I also don't believe that these two are peas in a pod. I think there's a relationship there, but I don't believe that one is a condition predicate or condition precedent for the other.
Thanks for that answer. Because I do believe they, I don't know if I'd say peas in a pod, but I do believe they need to be consistent with each other. I can't support a motion until we would have a consistent, and let me put it this way, not consistent, until we would have language in UPAC rules that we could at least compare this to. So I'll be voting no on the substitute motion, but we can revisit it again in January if it's the will of the committee.
Thank you, Member Lair. I have a question for staff, and maybe Elise, you can help us understand the difference between these two motions. If the committee postponed the discussion to a later date, what would be the process to bring it back? Would it have to be resubmitted by 3 members, or could it just be, as executive leadership is looking at what needs to come back, we can bring it back when we feel like it's ready?
I'm going to punt to AAG Beal if she's available. I want to say, but I'm not 100% sure and don't want to speak out of turn.
Yes, I'm pulling up my Robert's Rules cheat sheet right now to look at the exact difference. Okay. I apologize, I'm just glancing
you're
at
good.
the difference.
You're good. And I just want to make sure because if we say it has to come back in January, and I understand if it's not ready in January, we can always postpone it. My concern is if the LEAs are spending time, to Member Lear's point, trying to prepare for it, but then we're not quite ready versus, I don't know if there's anything that precludes us from putting it in January with Member Lear's motion if it is updated. That's what I want to verify.
I understand the logic there. The way I'm thinking of it is if the committee votes to postpone it, then it's my understanding the committee would need to vote to bring it back. And between now and January, I don't think we have any other committee meetings slated outside of the UPAC ones. So I certainly don't want to convene the committee just to vote on whether or not this should come back. But that's the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, and I just was wondering the difference between tabling it and postponing it. Right, so that's where tabling is where I would understand that we would have to vote to bring it back, but that's why I want to understand. I don't want to necessarily stop the process, but I want to make sure it's ready to come back.
To table, you would have to vote to bring it back. You would have to vote to bring it off of the table. To postpone, you can either postpone indefinitely, which I still think you would need to vote to bring it back, or you can postpone until a time certain.
And AAG Bill, with the original motion of postponing the item to a later date, would that stop executive leadership from putting it on the January agenda if it's ready?
No, it would not. And I think especially as long as we're noticing it, that would be absolutely fine.
Okay, thank you. Um,
No problem.
I appreciate that feedback. Any other questions to this substitute motion? Okay, I will speak to this. If it's ready in January, I'd love for it to come back. I also don't want my LEAs to be worried that it's gonna come back and be waiting and waiting if we aren't quite ready. AAG, Bill, do we have an estimated time that we'll hear back from the AG's office by chance?
Unfortunately, I don't. I've reached out to contacts in a couple different divisions, both the constitutional division and also the division of professional licensing, to kind of get takes from the different sections. And I haven't heard back, so that's something I will follow up, and I'll give calls to those individuals. But I don't have a specific timeline, unfortunately.
I have a question for Ashley.
Okay, thank you. Member Lear.
It's a kind of a similar follow-up question, Ashley. Do you, well, let me start with, my experience is sometimes the AG's office says to the board, has said to the board, you know what, this is something that you can decide on your own. You can do your own research, you can make your own policy choices. Have they given you a sense, has anybody given you a sense of, yes, we'll get to it? Or is the question still, will you be willing to do this, consult with us?
So I think the AG's office doesn't often give formal written opinions anymore, like from the AG. So I think that's unlikely. What I'm trying to do is more vet it through the other divisions that maybe have more expertise in these specific areas and garner advice so that I can provide some cohesive advice with support from those specific divisions to you guys.
And so, if I can just follow up, so that suggests that you can have that consultation at some point.
Yes, yeah, I'm not worried that I'm not
They'll
going to be
just say,
able to.
you're on your own. They're not going to just say,
No.
sorry, you've waited 3 months, you're on your own. Okay, thank you. That helps me understand. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay,
So oh, sorry.
go ahead.
Vice Chair.
Go ahead, Chair Carey.
So it's my understanding then that even if the committee votes to postpone, should the matter be ready to proceed, this matter could be heard in January by this committee without this committee voting to bring it back.
Yes, as long as leadership approves it and we get it agendized, that shouldn't be a problem.
Then with that, I withdraw my substitute motion.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So with that, we'll go to the underlying motion that the committee postpone discussion of this item to a later date. Any discussion to that motion? Okay, let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, did you say nay? You're opposed. Okay, so with that, that does pass 4-1 with Chair Carey being the opposition. And with that, I will turn the time back over to Chair Carey.
On the opposition as much as I was opposed to the motion, but I understand what was being said. I understand. Deputy Newey.
Thank you. Our next items on the agenda are the UPPAC rules. So we have R277, 210, 211, 215, and 217. These were requested by 3 or more members of the board. And with that, I will pass it back to you, Chair Carey.
So I know that the last set of UPPAC rules that we received last month were because they were on their 5-year renewal. And it's my understanding that this committee voted to defer consideration of those rules because this committee is also conducting meetings on at the direction of the full board to review all UPPAC rules and make a recommendation. Is that correct?
This body passed those rules for their 5-year review, but that is correct that this committee also deferred a deeper conversation of the content of the rules to a later date. That is correct.
So it wouldn't make sense to me to do that to the set of rules that were here before us last month because we are conducting an ongoing review of all UPPAC rules and then consider these, but are these in any different legal setting or administrative setting than the rules that were before us last time that would require us to act differently?
No, this was a board member request that they be discussed.
So these can be treated the same way that we treated the last set of UPAC rules, and that would mean, I'm just trying to understand the process, but could we vote to have these considered at the same time that the other UPAC rules that we passed but did not amend, could we treat these similarly?
There were no drafts really submitted with this request, so this is really nothing more than a discussion item, as I think, because there have been no updated drafts submitted. There wasn't a lot of detail given in the request as to what specifically they wanted to discuss, but it would certainly be appropriate if the committee wanted to postpone this until to be part of your ongoing process.
Vice Chair Bollinger, I can't tell if you're, I saw
I'm
the
trying to think of how I want to phrase my question, if I may, Chair. Yeah, then this is maybe, I don't know if this would go to Ben or Elise, but to this point of, if we wanted to, as a committee, postpone these to discuss them as part of our UPAC, I'm not sure if that would be the motion, or to table these until we bring back our findings from UPAC. What would be our course of action?
I think either one of those options would have the same functional effect. If we table them, it does effectively end this item until it is proactively brought back. But my understanding is that this committee has the intention of doing that at a later date. And so at that time, they would be brought back, right? And so whether you postpone it indefinitely with the plan to do that later, or table it and then bring it back separately in March or whenever that is set, it would have the same functional effect.
And a follow-up, if I may, Chair. And if that was the vote or the will of this committee, if we make a committee vote, does that then have to go to the full board to sustain that vote? Or would it just stay within our committee discretion to bring that back off the table?
My understanding, and AAG Beal and Director Asmus, correct me if I'm wrong, is if you take no action today, then there's no action for the board. And so that would, it would have no impact on next month's full board agenda, but still have the same effect. You could still bring them back.
My preference would be that we treat these the same way that we treated the set from last month. I think one, just for consistency, and then two, we know that they're going to be on the same track. There's not going to be one set that's on this track from last month and then another set of UPAC rules that are on a different track. That would be my concern, but I also don't want to bog down the full board with an issue that, as a committee, we've decided this doesn't make sense to hear at this time. So those are the things that I'm weighing out. Vice Chair?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I see it differently because we've already gone through 210, 211, 215, and 217. We've already taken these to the full board for continuation a few months back. The ones that we brought to the board, the 212, the 214, 216, and even 210 was before, 213, thank you. Those had some minor revisions and amendments to them, which is also needed to be continued. So that's what my understanding was. That's why we pushed them to the full board, with the understanding that we would also continue to have discussions on them. So I actually see these coming back to us differently because we've already continued these rules. And yes, they do warrant continued discussion as we look at the UPAC, but I don't see a purpose in pushing these forward to the full board unless we're taking action. And to Director Rasmussen's point, we don't have a draft that we're even discussing on any of these rules in backup.
So if I may, so Director Rasmussen, so to that point, are we being asked to consider anything new that already wasn't addressed the last time these same rules were before this committee?
I touched base with Board Member Bogus, who was the lead sponsor, this is my understanding, and she did not have any new drafts at this point. No, there's nothing new other than the drafts that had been discussed a few months back that she submitted. To my knowledge, there is nothing new.
Okay, thank you. I apologize. I thought Vice Chair
Joe,
Bollinger. I'm sorry, Board Member Lear.
I think we may be overcomplicating this a bit. Having been in those executive leadership meetings, planning meetings, and having listened in more recently, the practical matter is the chair says, are these ready? Do you want these rules on the agenda, Chair Carey? And you say, they're not ready. Or you say, yes, they're ready. And they go on the committee per your request. So given that there's no urgency, given that there's no new drafts, given that there is not a continuation that needs to be done, I think we can just continue these indefinitely the way we did the previous item. And then when they are ready, either singularly or jointly, then in that committee, you can tell the board chair that, yes, they're ready to go, or 3 of them are ready to go. Let's put them on the agenda. Because the board members, the 3 board members' request is still standing and still is still in order. So I don't think we need to overbake this and with extra motions and just say they're continued and they can come back when you tell the board chair they're ready.
That makes sense. So if anyone is ready to make a motion.
Thank you, Chair. I'll make a motion, and if you can help me maybe word this, if we can combine all of these into one motion, if the committee is amenable to that. I would make a motion that the committee postpone R277210, R277211, R277215, and R277217 to a future committee meeting. What was the wording that we did from the previous
Or
one?
2 future committee meetings, even if that's not.
Oh, to a later date. That works too. Has the same purpose and outcome, is that correct? Okay, so that would be my motion.
So the motion before the committee is that the committee postpone R277-210, R277-211, R277-215, and R277-217 to a later date. Any discussion, any additional discussion to that item? If not, all those in favor? I oppose. That motion passes 4-1. And then Deputy Nui, is there any additional matters that need to be discussed? Okay. All in favor? Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you.